Well, thanks for joining us again. Let's bring you up to speed on developments over the last couple of hours out of Ukraine and from the Russian invasion. More meetings for the Russian President Vladimir Putin, who will be holding one with the Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan in the Black Sea resort of Sochi on August 5th. Both leaders are expected to discuss regional problems and bilateral relations. The UK has sanctioned Russian officials imposed in the Luhansk and Donetsk provinces in eastern Ukraine, as well as 29 regional governors across Russia in response to Moscow's invasion. Vitaly Kosenko and Vladislav Kuznetsov, the Russian-imposed minister and first deputy chairman of the so-called Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics, were among the 42 new designations, which also included Russia's minister and deputy minister of justice and two nephews of Russian billionaire Alisher Osmanov, who was himself sanctioned by the UK in March. Russia has also announced it is quitting the International Space Station after 2024, but will continue to fulfill its obligations to partners. Russian cosmonauts on the ISS have received particular attention in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, with early speculation that the crew's choice to wear yellow and blue flight suits while boarding the station in March was a subtle show of Ukrainian solidarity. Turkish Defense Ministry says a joint coordination center for Ukrainian grain exports under the UN brokered deal will be opened in a ceremony in Istanbul tomorrow. Russia, Ukraine, Turkey and the UN are expected to appoint representatives at the JCC to monitor the implementation of the plan. And finally, Russia's defense ministry says the military has destroyed 8 missiles and artillery arms depots in the Mykolaiv region. It comes after Ukraine reported multiple missile strikes in Mykolaiv and in the southern port city of Odessa. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky released a video of the wreckage of houses in Zatoka, a popular resort village in the west of Odessa, saying no military bases, no troops, Russian terrorists just wanted to shoot. They will be held accountable for all of this. Well, on to other issues. Now, the European Union's finance ministers have finished their meeting just a while ago, approving a plan to reduce natural gas use, that is, by 15% in order to cut dependence on supplies from Russia. That agreement involves voluntary reductions between the months of August and March and will allow member states to stockpile supplies ahead of the coming winter months. The deal comes amid the prospect that Russia will cut off gas supplies to the EU in response to EU sanctions against Russia for its invasion of Ukraine. In case of emergency, the EU could make the cuts mandatory, although with certain exemptions that were agreed to as part of a compromise in order to reach the agreement.
Ministers agreed on voluntary reduction of EU's gas consumption between the 1st of August and March 31st, 2023 by at least 15% compared to its average consumption during the same period over the previous 5 years. Today we are sending a strong signal, not only to Vladimir Putin, who once again failed to divide the European Union, but most importantly to our citizens. Today's decision ensures we will not have to face dramatic consequences in winter, including gas scarcity or the price spikes.
The discussion showed that while solidarity is necessary, it works best when we recognise that the circumstances of the member states vary widely. Some are not integrated into the EU gas network or don't use gas at all. The outcome takes these differences into account. I was very frank with the ministers today on the need for the plan to remain credible, and we have succeeded in ensuring that. Our initial calculations indicate that even if all the exemptions were used in full, we would achieve a demand reduction that would help us safely through an average winter. The most crucial outcome is that we will start saving gas now and that we have a blueprint to act together in a coordinated way if the situation worsens. Reducing gas demand proactively allows us to avoid rushed or unilateral decisions when it is too late. It will make it possible to plan the savings in the most efficient way, minimising the impact on our people and businesses. The impact on the GDP will be significantly smaller if we start saving now and don't wait until Russia forces us to do so.
Russia's Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov, who is still in Africa, in Uganda today, says Moscow has still not received a proper explanation about the status of a turbine from the Nord Stream 1 gas pipeline that has been serviced by Siemens Energy in Canada. It was only mirroring what Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said about the turbines. They had not yet arrived, but Moscow hopes it will be installed sooner rather than later. Russian gas giant Gazprom said yesterday it had received documentation on the turbine, but some issues and risks remain. Russia blames the delay over the turbine when it cut gas flows through the Nord Stream 1 to Germany to 40% of its capacity in June. Well, more on Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov, who's also reiterated that the sanctions against Russia complicate the work of the Nord Stream 1, which is lowering gas supplies to Europe to just 20% of its capacity and maintenance. Gazprom has said flows would fall to 33 million cubic meters per day from tomorrow, Wednesday, a halving of the current already reduced level because it needed to halt the operation of a gas turbine at a compressor station on instructions from an industry watchdog. Well, as finance ministers prepared to hold their meeting this morning to discuss cutting gas supplies, Poland's climate minister Anna Moskwa said the latest EU proposal was neutral for her country because it concluded no binding targets. She said Warsaw was against signing obligatory reduction targets to countries, and in the gas storage sites in Poland are full, and her country does not need to limit gas usage for now.
The proposal is neutral for Poland. This proposal is different for different countries, and what we will be advocating today is that the approach to this document should not depend only on our Polish view, but on the view of each individual country. I want to make sure that none of the countries is forced into reduction, that none of the countries is forced or is unhappy with this document or is forced to limit their energy security. With this document, we do not want to force any country to accept solutions that will be unacceptable. We do not need any limits. 11 countries have some limits when it comes to gas. Poland does not, and there is no need for any limits as the storage sites are full and we have gas delivered to Poland.
As for the German economy minister, Robert Habeck, the New Deal showed a strong and unified European Union, and that Europe remains united despite Russia's efforts at splitting opinions. Habeck said Germany already stood at 14 or 15% savings this year, but that could change towards winter, according to him.
Europe is a complicated entity, but from this complex situation, it is always possible, and I would say this looking back at the last 6 months, to act astonishingly strong and astonishingly united out in a spirit of community. I think that's how it will be today. We will now go into the final rounds of voting on the final paper, but in the end, I expect a strong, unified signal that, first of all, Europe is supporting each other, the countries in Europe, that the markets remain open, that we are jointly expanding the infrastructure and making joint efforts to reduce gas consumption in this case.
French President Emmanuel Macron is in Cameroon, the first leg of his Africa tour, where he's described the current global food crisis as one of Russia's weapons of war. Cameroon, like many developing countries, is grappling with sharp increases in prices for oil, fertilizer and foodstuff. Severe fuel shortages hit the capital Yaoundé last week, leading to long queues at petrol stations. The French president's trip to Africa is meant to strengthen political ties with the continent and help boost agricultural production amid the growing food insecurity linked to the war in Ukraine. African governments have largely avoided taking sides and refused to join Western condemnation and the sanctions. want to bring in economist Akinlade Adedayo. He joins me now from Moscow. Akinlade, thank you so much for joining me on the program today. Let me begin with the visits by the French President Emmanuel Macron and Russia's Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov. They're in Africa as we speak. Quite unusual visits this time of the year. And this is also happening as the war is being fought in Ukraine. What can Africa offer the world?
Good evening, Hamarashi. Thanks for having me again. What can I say? Africa is having a lot of things to offer the world because this is just an evidence of what Russia have been saying for a while, that the world is about to turn from a single multipolar world from a single world to a multipolar world, what they usually say. And you can see that there has been a lot of information that the European countries, or let's say the Western countries, they want to isolate Russia. And this is just an evidence that Russia cannot be isolated. And you can see that President Putin, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Lavrov, all of them, they are traveling to a lot of countries in order to improve their relationship with those countries. So which is just an evidence that Russia is now they are moving towards the multipolar world that they are preaching. So you can see that immediately there is a movement by Russian to any country. The Western country, they need to send their representative to such country. So which is Africa. Africa is having no option before. We have just one country just to listen to, which is the Western country. Now another world is about to be created, and they need a lot of people. We can see that, let me cite an example that in some years back now, we can see that there is a revolt in the French countries like Mali, Burkina Faso. And in this country, they are ready to have relationship with Russia, which is also laying a foundation for countries like Cameroon and maybe Benin. So which France will not allow something of that nature to happen maybe in the nearest future. So I can say from my own perspective, this is just an evidence of what is happening in that African country and some other countries in the nearest future.
But is it interesting, that they're making these trips to other countries? The Russian foreign minister is in Uganda today. Yesterday he was in Egypt, and he's off to Ethiopia, I think, eventually. And then the French president is in Cameroon today. He also has about 2 other countries to visit. Is it interesting that none of these visits are passing through, and none of these VIPs is passing through Nigeria?
Actually, I don't know what I can say about Nigeria in the recent time, because Nigeria is having a very close tie with the Western country, the Britain and maybe America. But I know maybe in the nearest future, something of that nature might probably happen.
Okay, well, moving on now, Russia's given no assurances of gas deliveries to Europe. And now the European countries are cutting gas use by 15%. How sustainable do you think that will be? Because I think they intend to hold on to this until, Russia eventually stops its operations in Ukraine.
I think we can see from what Russians have been saying for a while, they are giving the evidence that they are keeping to their contract. So I don't think I can give like an example. Every European citizens know that there is a regular repairs of everything that has to do with gas pipe or maybe hot water pipe during summertime, because this is the best time for the repairs. I can see, according to what Russia said, they say they are carrying out their regular repairs. So that is why all this cut in the gas supply. That is why a turbine was sent to Canada, to the Siemens for repairs. So all these repairs are being carried out as a regular checkup to make sure that things works out during the winter time. But it is just that it is unfortunate that the whole process come in a period like this, that Europe is having conflict with Russia. And Russia the problem is that people are not listening to Russia. Russia keeping on saying this on a regularly basis, that we are keeping up to our contract. What we're supposed to do, we are going to do. We are going to play our own role, just play your own role. If the European countries, they can do whatsoever they're supposed to do at the right time, Russia is going to keep on supplying gas as they have promised.
But Russia did change the agreement, right? Because gas supplies were supposed to be paid for in dollars, but then Russia changed it, and now people are paying for gas in ruble. So Russia didn't quite keep to its own agreements, right?
Actually, according to the contract, they said that it is stated in the contract that there are other alternatives, which means that despite the fact that they are having the contract either in euro or in dollars, there are also clauses there that gives Russia to ask for another means of payment. It's just that during this period, we all know that the Europe are staying to the sanction. That is why they are not interested in paying in rubles. But according to the clauses that they are having in the contract, they clearly stated that there are some other currencies behind dollars and euro. So I think that Russia is not violating any rule in that part.
And do you think that these sanctions imposed by the West are working on Russia? Are they being felt?
Actually, I can say that compared to what we've been feeling on February, March, at the early stage of the military action in Ukraine, I can say that there is a great change now. Even I can say that there is deflections because the cost of foodstuffs that we are buying at higher prices then, the price is reduced drastically. And we can also, the evidence of this is what we just felt last week, Friday, when the federal government, the central bank, reduced the interest rate. There is a cut in the interest rate from 10.5% to 8%. And this is the third time of it. This is the third time they are carrying out this right from the beginning of the operation. We can see that at the beginning of the war operation, around February, the interest rate, the federal government and the central bank, they increased the interest rate to around 20%. So which discourage people from borrowing money. But later on, they reduced the interest rate down to 12.5%, later to 10%. And on Friday, it was reduced to 8%. And also the inflation rate is also, the inflation rate, I think the statistics also reduced from 17.5%. I think the inflation rate is around maybe 11 or 10% now. So there is a great improvement. Russia is having the materials to fight the sanctions.
Akinlade Adedayo, thank you so much for breaking it down for us. Appreciate you joining me on the program today. Thanks
for having me.
We're in Russia now. The defense team of U.S. basketball player Brittney Griner, detained in Russia on drug charges, have argued in court today that she had used medical cannabis to assuage pain from injuries like many other elite international athletes. Griner, a Women's National Basketball Association WNBA player who has played in Russia during the league's off-season, was detained at the Moscow airport on February 17 with vape cartridges containing hashish oil in her luggage. Medical marijuana is illegal in Russia. She faces a possible jail sentence of up to 10 years in a case that has highlighted the fraught relations between Russia and the United States at a time of heightened tension over Moscow's military intervention in Ukraine.
During the time we were in the courtroom, as usual, we were able to spend time with Ms. Griner, talk to her, ask her about her welfare, and she confirms that she is doing okay and as well as can be expected under these circumstances.
We are still saying that she involuntarily brought it here because she was in a rush, as she said, packing, and this medication, she just forgot to take it out of her luggage.
Welcome back to The World Today. At least 5 people have been killed and about 50 others wounded in anti-United Nations protests in the Democratic Republic of Congo's eastern city of Goma today. Violence took place on the second day of protests against the peacekeeping mission, MONUSCO, and that's the United Nations Organization Stabilization Mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo, for failing to protect civilians in a region marred by decades of militia violence. Hundreds of protesters scaled the perimeter walls, smashed windows, and looted valuables, while helicopters airlifted UN staff from the premises and security forces fired tear gas in a bid to disperse the protesters. MONUSCO has been gradually withdrawing for years. Our resurgent clashes between local troops and the M23 rebel group in eastern DRC have displaced thousands of people. Attacks by militants linked to Islamic State have also continued despite a year-long state of emergency and joint operations against them by the Congolese and Ugandan armies. Organizers of a planned presidential debate in Kenya ahead of elections next month say the debate will go ahead tonight, despite 2 of the 4 candidates saying they will not be attending. Former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, who's one of the 2 front-runners, said on Sunday he would skip it in favor of a parallel town hall forum. He alleged his main rival, Deputy President William Ruto, had demanded some issues like corruption be taken off the agenda. Mr. Ruto has confirmed his attendance, urging Mr. Odinga to come along and mocking him for running away. The debate was to be 2-tiered, meaning Mr. Odinga and Mr. Ruto would face each other after George Wajakoya and David Mware, who have each scored less than 5% in opinion polls, had debated. But Mr. Wakoya, who has been campaigning on a platform to promote the production of marijuana in Kenya, says he was not going to feature in the main debate and he would not be attending. It's not clear now if Mr. Wahiga and Mr. Ruto will be facing each other tonight. 8 children, a teacher and a driver have died after a minibus ferrying them to primary school fell into a roadside ditch in southern Tanzania. Police chief of the Mtwara region, Nicodemus Katembo, said 19 other pupils from King David School were injured in the accident this morning. The injured are being treated at Mtwara's Ligula Referral Hospital. The authorities are investigating the cause of the accident. Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu Hassan has sent condolences to the families of the deceased. The leader of Ethiopia's rebel Tigray People's Liberation Front, Debretsion Gebremichael, has reportedly said the group will not negotiate on the disarmament of the Tigray army as it prepares for peace talks with the federal government. According to local TV, Gebremichael says Western Tigray should be given back to Tigray, to which it belongs. The 2 sides are preparing to hold peace talks to end the civil war that has killed thousands of people and displaced millions since November 2020. A check-in on Myanmar a day after 4 pro-democracy activists were executed in the country. Hundreds of people have been protesting outside the embassy in Bangkok. Large crowds of demonstrators chanting slogans and calling for justice while holding portraits of the executed activists and deposed leader Aung San Suu Kyi of the National League for Democracy Party. The military, which seized power in a coup last year, announced yesterday it had executed the activists for aiding terror acts by a civilian resistance movement, Myanmar's first execution in decades. The protesters spoke of Myanmar being abandoned by neighboring countries, but say they will not give up speaking against the junta. In the meantime, Myanmar's ruling military has defended its actions, saying the execution of the 4 activists was within the law, brushing off a deluge of international condemnation, including from its closest neighbors. Junta spokesperson Zormington said the men were given due process and insisted those executed were not democracy activists, but killers deserving of their punishment. It's unclear how the executions were carried out and when they took place. Family members of the condemned prisoners said that they had not been informed of the executions beforehand and had not been allowed to retrieve the bodies of their loved ones. He said the junta spokesperson said the return of the bodies was up to the prison chief.
These criminals were given the chance to defend themselves. The verdict of the trial was based on eyewitness and facts. We knew it would raise criticisms and condemnation, but inevitably we decided on the case for the sake of security. The trial was conducted under the law. It was not personal.
Malaysia has joined in condemning the Myanmar junta execution of 4 pro-democracy activists, describing the action as a crime against humanity and a mockery of a regional peace plan. Foreign Minister Saifuddin Abdullah questioned the timing of the executions, which came a week before a meeting within the Association of Southeast Asian Countries. The 10-member bloc, which has also condemned the executions, had been pushing for Myanmar to adhere to a 5-point peace plan it agreed to last year.
We look at it that as if the junta is making a mockery of the 5-point consensus, and I think we really have to look at this very, very seriously. Myanmar should not be invited to send political representation to all ministerial level meetings. This is to show that we are very serious on the issue of political representation.
So let me first echo the United Nations Secretary General's strong condemnation of the execution of the pro-democracy leaders by the military. It is a blatant violation of the right to life, liberty, and security of person.
Meanwhile, the United States says there can be no business as usual with Myanmar's ruling military following its execution of the 4 democracy activists, adding that all options were on the table as it considered further measures to punish the junta. Speaking at a regular briefing, U.S. State Department spokesperson Ned Price called on countries to ban sales of military equipment to Myanmar and refrain from any action that would lend the junta any international credibility. And whilst the Biden administration was considering sanctions on Myanmar's gas industry, a sector that was spared in previous rounds of U.S. sanctions, Mr. Price said that in the discussions of further measures, all options were on the table.
We underscore that with the escalating violence, with these horrific atrocities that the junta has carried out, there can be no business as usual with this regime. We urge all countries to ban the sale of military equipment to Burma, to refrain from lending the regime any degree of international credibility, and we call on ASEAN to maintain its important precedent, only allowing Burmese non-political representation at regional events. We are urging all of our partners to step up that economic pressure, that political pressure on the regime in Burma. Not only is this an affront to the human rights of the Burmese people, not only is it a slap in the face to the millions of Burmese who wish to see their country back on the path to democracy, it's also a direct rebuke of the appeal that the junta heard and the world heard from the ASEAN chair, Cambodia, in this case, and other ASEAN leaders who warned the junta in no uncertain terms not to carry out these executions.
We told you Myanmar's military junta has defended its actions with the execution of the 4 activists in Myanmar yesterday. The government announced that the 4 activists had been executed following their accusations and the trial of them for terror charges. According to a government spokesperson, the men were given due process and insisted those executed were not democracy activists, but were killers deserving their punishment. So to declare exactly when the executions happened, but family members did approach the prison yesterday to retrieve the bodies of their loved ones. Let's bring in lawyer and foreign affairs commentator Chukwemeka Eze, who joins us now from London. Chukwemeka, I'm glad we could reconnect with you. What do you make of the Myanmar junta's reaction to the global condemnation and, the execution itself, the defense of the execution of those activists?
The reaction was expected, but it falls short of the international standard for human rights. the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. They've attained the level of jus cogens under Article 53 of the Vienna Convention on Law of Treaties. These human rights covenants, conventions, have attained a level that the level of customary international law, that all countries of the world, whether they are parties to those conventions, declarations or not, they are bound by it. The Myanmar trial falls short of it. And no matter the defense given by the regime, it will be seen by the United Nations as arbitrary execution of the 4 democracy activists. That's the position.
You just mentioned the international community and, how the executions contravene many of the conventions, many of international conventions. But then what can countries do about this? What can international organizations do about this?
Definitely the United Nations has they have a committee, the United Nations Human Rights Council, which is a product of the United Nations Human Rights Commission. I think they are going to look into it. They have a committee on arbitrary executions, and a rapporteur on this, I believe, will be appointed. As we speak now, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, the 10-member association, they started speaking. Hun Sen, the Cambodian Prime Minister, has condemned it, which is not usually the case for Asian countries in the past. Malaysia has condemned it, and within a week, there's going to be a meeting of the Asian Asian Association, and certainly they are going to condemn it. And when they condemn it, United Nations condemn it, there will be greater pressure on Myanmar concerning this abuse of human rights.
The U.S. wants China to intervene, but China, of course, we know, hardly interferes or intervenes in any country's domestic affairs. But if they chose, however, what sort of influence could they have on Myanmar?
Yes, if China chooses, China may withdraw its support for the Myanmar government because the biggest supporter of that government is China, and China has a veto power in the Security Council. It means that any resolution concerning this action or any action involving Myanmar will not pass through without the cooperation of China, Russia, France, United Kingdom, and their 5th member. So certainly China will veto it, and that's why U.S. has to appeal to China, because China has been giving 100% support to Myanmar. So the threat by China that we will withdraw, we will not exercise our veto power, will be sufficient to send a signal to the military junta in Myanmar. So China has a lot of role to play concerning Myanmar.
Now, apparently, the junta will be in power for a long time, the way they're going about this. Have we seen the last of democracy in Myanmar?
Certainly, democracy in Myanmar has suffered. I don't want to say irredeemably, but with the recent, with the coup of February 2021 and suppression of democracy activists after years of doing it before, I think the military junta, they are not in a hurry to back off. So democracy in Myanmar in the next 5 to 10 years, even if it is realizable, it will not be the real democracy. So I don't see the military junta leaving the government, holding of power. Even when Aung San Suu Kyi was there as the leader, the military was still exercising their power. So not to talk of now that they are fully in charge. They were out of power. They saw how they lost out in the power game, and power is so sweet, they are not in a hurry to go. So certainly democracy has suffered, if not in the long term, but surely in the middle term. In the short term, there won't be democracy in Myanmar, certainly.
Yeah, and those protests, the anti-junta protests, have gone on for almost a year now, since the military junta took over power. We also saw protests in Sri Lanka, which caused President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to eventually flee. You think that protests could have any impact on the government currently in power in Myanmar?
Certainly, it will have impact because the government, before this government left, they never thought this would happen. It has been a game of musical chairs. You take power, later you give to your brother. So the same family, the same kindred have been circulating power, relying on their defeat of the Tamil Tigers earlier, some years ago, basking on the euphoria of winning that civil war. They thought they would be in leadership in Sri Lanka forever. But times have changed. The people's power has chased them away. And I think definitely it has rewritten the history of democracy in Sri Lanka. But as they say that the more things seem to change, the more they remain the same. Let's see how it plays out, because the mafia in power in Sri Lanka, they are not in a hurry to go. That's why the former prime minister has now been elected or selected or appointed to be the president. So I think to a large extent it will be continuation of the previous regime's policies, but definitely they've seen the anger of the people, the power of the people. If the current and the new president continues, definitely he will experience, the people will not back down so easily. They've seen the people's power and they will not let it go as simple, as easy as many may think. So I see democracy thriving in Sri Lanka after this jigsaw, after this experience by the powers that be and the fleeing of the former president Rajapaksa.
Oh, yeah, and that might also be replicated in Myanmar as well. Chukwemeka Eze, thank you so much for speaking with me on The World Today.
Thank you very much.
Let's head on to Britain now, where the final two candidates in the race to succeed Prime Minister, outgone Prime Minister Boris Johnson, clashed yesterday in a televised debate during which they tore into each other's tax and spending plans. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, the bookmakers' favourite to win the Conservative Party leadership election, told former Finance Minister Rishi Sunak his emphasis on balancing the government's books would tip the economy into recession. Sunak, whose resignation from government earlier this month set in motion Johnson's fall, said Truss's plan to cut taxes was nothing more than a sugar rush for the economy that would be followed by a crash.
Some of the worst cost of living problems that we've had.
When we get in, we'll have to see what happens to energy bills. I think people have seen from me over the past couple of years that as the situation changes on the ground, I'm always going to respond to support people through it. But that's just about the short term. I think it's also worth us taking a moment to think, well, how do we solve this problem in the long term? And I think there's a couple of things we can do. The first is to help people with energy efficiency.
Absolutely.
And we need more homegrown energy here at home.
I would act immediately. I understand that people here, people around the country, are struggling with some of the worst cost of living problems that we've had for generations. It's hard to pay for fuel. It's hard to pay for food. I would reverse the increase in national insurance. I'd also have a temporary moratorium on the green energy levy, which would help cut money from fuel bills. That was very important. That would come in straight away.
Well, look, we all took a decision to protect the economy and support the NHS through COVID. And of course, we all knew there was a bill that we needed to pay for that. So the question is, should we pay that bill ourselves, or do we put it on the country's credit card and pass the tab to our children and grandchildren to take care of? Now, I don't think that's right. I don't think it's responsible, and it's certainly not conservative, and that's what I wouldn't do as Prime Minister.
Not responsible, Liz Truss. Under my plans, we would start paying down the debt in 3 years' time. So I'm not putting it on the never, never. I would start paying it down in 3 years.
Liz, that's simply not right. You promised almost £40 billion of unfunded tax cuts, £40 billion more borrowing. That is the country's credit card. It's our children and grandchildren. Everyone here has kids. So we're going to have to pick up the tab for that.
Rishi, that is not true.
There's nothing conservative about doing it.
Under my plans, we would start paying down the debt in 3 years' time.
And we need to get a grip of inflation. And if we don't do that now, it's going to cost all of you and everybody watching at home far more in the long run. And you know what? Liz, your plans, your own economic advisor has said that that would lead to mortgage rates, interest rates going up to 7%. Can you imagine what that's going to do for everyone here and everyone watching? That's thousands of pounds on their mortgage bill. It's going to tip millions of people into misery.
Health now, according to an official from the World Health Organization, the rapidly spreading monkeypox outbreak can be stopped. Rosamund Lewis, WHO technical lead on monkeypox, told reporters the outbreak can be stopped with the right strategies. WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus said on Saturday the outbreak represents a global health emergency. And the WHO's highest level of alert has been raised. Lewis said although the outbreak remains concentrated on groups of men who have sex with men in some countries, it's not the case in many other countries, adding that it is important to prevent stigma and discrimination. Ms. Lewis says the WHO is still discussing the implementation of a global mechanism, monkeypox vaccine sharing.
So as you know, the determination of a public health emergency of international concern constitutes the highest level of global public health alert that the World Health Organization can offer and can determine. And through this, we hope to enhance the coordination, cooperation of countries and all stakeholders, as well as global solidarity. We do at this moment still believe that this outbreak of monkeypox can be stopped with the right strategies in the right groups. But time is going by, and we all need to pull together to make that happen. Because at the moment, the outbreak is still concentrated in groups of men who have sex with men in some countries, but that is not the case everywhere. It is really important to appreciate also that stigma and discrimination can be very damaging and as dangerous as any virus itself. Preventing stigma and discrimination is critically important because our concern is that if there is stigma and discrimination and fear, then those people may not come forward for access to diagnostics and care, and that could certainly damage the response. And at the moment, yes, the United States of America has released a significant quantity of vaccines back to the manufacturer in order to support requests from other countries. WHO is still working towards determining a global coordination mechanism. At the moment, it's something that's still in discussion and will continue to be in discussion today and with our partners. Yeah.
We're still tracking the weather here on Channels Television. Let's head on to Yemen, where heavy rain has caused at least 22 deaths as of today. Torrential downpours have triggered landslides and mudslides, sweeping away homes and destroying roads and farmlands. A rain which continued since last Saturday has been tapering off now across the country, but according to the local weather authorities, it will linger on for some more days. Mountainous and plateau areas in western Yemen were most affected. Severely affected, that is, as the downpours wreaked havoc across the country. Yemen's capital, Sana'a, received at least 84.4 millimeters of rain in 24 hours from Saturday to Sunday. Among victims of the torrential rainfall were a family of 6 in Sana'a, as a rain-triggered landslide hit their house, leaving 3 of the children dead and 3 others injured. Muhammad Ali, who's speaking there in the video, a neighbor of the victim, said the rain was so heavy, a large rock was swept down the hill at 5 in the morning, killing 2 boys and a girl. There were 6 people in the house at the time, he says. People's life is so hard right now, and they're in so much trouble. There's nowhere for them to take shelter, and they have nothing left. The relentless natural disasters added woes to the Yemeni people who've suffered from the years of long civil war. And to Europe now, wildfire has destroyed several buildings of a pig farm in Kolscha, a village on the outskirts of Falkenberg, about 120 kilometers south of Berlin. During the night of today, because they're already ahead of us, a sudden change of wind direction let a wildfire spiral out of control. Also, neighbouring Rayfield were evacuated of all citizens, while firefighters and assisting farmers attempted to protect a pig farm and was partially destroyed, killing an unknown number of pigs. Near Rayfield, a fire threatened a number of wind turbines in a wind park. A forest fire in the region had started on Monday when the temperature in Falkenberg reached 35 degrees Celsius. Local media reported that over 800 hectares were covered in flames by today, while approximately 600 residents in the area were evacuated from their homes. Firefighters in Germany and the Czech Republic still fighting wildfires are spread across the border of the two countries. The blaze broke out on Sunday in the Bohemian Switzerland National Park. Strong winds pushed it over into Saxon, Switzerland National Park, Germany, where several fire brigades in the region were called in to fight the flames. Helicopters of the Czech army could be seen dumping water on parts of burning forests. Above the Elbe River, above the Czech town of Hrensko, near the border with Germany. Several villages have been evacuated by Czech authorities over the last few days. On the German side, Saxon Switzerland National Park urged visitors to stay away from the region, which is very popular with outdoor activists and well known for rock climbing and hiking. The firefighters are still battling those, fighting new wildfires across Spain as the persistent hot weather hindering extinguishing efforts and increasing the risk of new blazes. Valencia's fire brigade worked at a wildfire in the town of Calais, which started in the composting plant on Monday and is still active even today. 197 firefighters, 17 vehicles, and 2 drones are busy tackling the fire as we speak. This footage we're looking at from Monday night showing Spain's emergency military unit. Firefighters trying to extinguish huge blazes beside a main road in Humanes, in the Castilla Mancha region. Spain has experienced 2 heat waves since the summer began. According to government figures, to July 17, 78,000 hectares of farmland have been burned. It's the worst they've experienced in a decade. There have also been soaring temperatures in China, in the commercial capital Shanghai, throughout the month of July. They made life pretty unbearable for some people. But the manager of Shanghai's Yuhu Ice Company Limited, on the outskirts of the city, says business in 2022 is double that of a normal year. Though spending hot summer days surrounded by ice might seem like the coolest job in town, Ye and his factory workers are pouring sweat as they hoist 40-kilogram ice blocks onto trucks on days when Shanghai has issued an orange alert for temperatures topping 37 degrees. As well as Yuhu's regular customers, such as farmers, markets, and seafood markets around Shanghai, they're also selling more ice now to customers in other cities experiencing hot weather. Some officials are saying have started providing ice blocks to make volunteers even more comfortable during the city's regular mass COVID-19 testing. There's been a lot of energy freezing those ice blocks. 4 years on from the dramatic rescue of a group of 12 boys and their soccer coach from a cave in Thailand, a story is being told by Oscar-winning filmmaker, SEAL units, and volunteers from around the world.
13. Brilliant. As soon as I started talking to these guys and interviewing them and getting to know them, I felt an immediate connection to having talked to the astronauts on Apollo 13 and met with those guys. It's a similar sort of problem-solving mentality, intelligence, calculated risk-taking, not recklessness. You know, it was very interesting to me to see the comparison.
There's a bit of a joke amongst the cave divers that we're all failed astronauts.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Ready? Ready?
This is to get out. Good work.
Vaguely, I'm not even a fan of the Lord of the Rings, but obviously I did know his character. But yes, I did know who he was. I'm not even a great cinema goer, I'm afraid. So lots of actors' names were thrown around by friends, and I think Vigo was there amongst them. But of course, I didn't imagine that. But we got on a Zoom call straight away. Once he was signed up to it, it was locked down because of COVID. Nobody was going out. He wasn't busy. I wasn't busy, and we spent hours and hours talking just on that first call, and we really got on.
And he set it up without telling any of us in the production that he was turning him on to some guys in Spain, some cavers in Spain. He's going in a cave.
A real one.
A real cave.
Yeah. We didn't dare tell you.
Oh, I remember that story. We followed it here every day, and so did the rest of the world. Glad that those boys are okay now. Thanks for watching The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubadi.